it's been a very different process working with people here than working with people in a warm country. So the last session that Tom and I did together, it was at this art gallery, and we had to bring our own heaters. It's been very cold here in England. So we were facilitating, and these guys were wearing like mittens, hats, like you were like covered in scarves, huge blanket, and you literally couldn't really see their bodies. You could see about this much of their faces. So for me, walking around, because I'm new to this as well. So, and I come from quite a hands-on healing technique. So I'm sort of doing my thing, but I can't actually, I don't know where I'm touching in the body, so I have to be really careful. So it was more hands-off for me, which was actually interesting. And I think it was good for me to teach me, which is what you've been talking about, Pi. You don't always need to touch. You know, the energy does its work anyway. So it's quite nice to kind of sit back a little bit and just let it all happen. So yeah, I just working with an energy that in a very cold room, I think is also challenging, because in my experience, it kind of takes people out of their process. If you're cold, it's, you know, you're in your body, but not in the way that you're surrendering to your body. Your body gets tight, contracts. So yeah, so I think people are coming out of their processes more than somewhere warm. What else? Yeah, the people don't move a lot here, but we've discussed that already. Everyone's quite kind of, I guess they're so cold as well. They had their arms around themselves. So trying to put their arms in different positions, it was slightly challenging because they were so cold. They kind of whipped their arms back into kind of holding themselves to keep warm. So, but it's been, yeah, I think people want to cozy down here now. It's like, again, going out that door is quite, it's not nice because it's cold. So sort of getting people to classes as well, again, it's a little bit challenging because it's Christmas time coming and everyone's in a very festive state. But yeah, I'm learning and growing every time I do it. So it's, and I'm still kind of taking note of what people do when they're in process as well. So yeah, it's a interesting thing. Also, I've been handing out the playlist to other clients of mine. And there's a 20-year-old guy who I've been seeing for about sort of 8 months, something like that. And he has actually all the same symptoms as Josh, but he's 20 years old, this guy. So he has a lot of anxiety. He has panic attacks. He finds it hard to concentrate. What else? He grew up with his father's depressed, so there's mental, he's very insecure, and he finds it hard to be in his body and settle into his body. However, since doing the Josh playlist, he said he feels more in his body than he's ever felt. And even though he's distracted because there's a lot going on in his life, he's able to calm himself and be very present, which I think is the other thing that, well, we'll hear from Kim, but it seems to work in an amazing way that's very subtle, but also very powerful and deep. It must calm the nervous system down, because the feedback, again, that is, yeah, it's quite extraordinary. I'm looking forward to chatting to Kim later.
Hi, everyone. Oh, where to begin? So to share with you the journey. It's been going for a very long time. It's been going for years. Of knowing that I had a bright, beautiful little boy that was distracted and very much busier and more anxious than he need be. And we have worked, I'm about to be interrupted by his brother, I can feel it. We've been working with lots of different techniques, trying to help him. So I've done a lot of occupational therapy just to help. And I was looking into polyvagal therapies for him, looking at the audio therapy there as the next step. And I couldn't find a practitioner that I could gel with. And it was literally the same week that I saw Lisa, and had an inner dance session with her, and thought, well, this is the audio therapy I'm looking for. And I said to Lisa, has Pi ever done this with children? Because I'm looking for something. I was looking for something audio because he's always had incredibly sensitive hearing, and he picks up on tiny bits of detail, and I just thought something about the audio would really resonate well with him, and something that doesn't feel like he has to do anything. So that was a question I left Lisa with, and she very kindly then put the message out to Pi, and this playlist came back, and that was, yeah, the beginning. And he listened to it in a way that I was not sure how it would go, because it's a strange set of noises for a 7-year-old. Are you going to come and sit here? Yeah. All right, I'm going to be joined by another little one. And you have to sit down. Okay. But he took to it really easily, and in fact started to ask for the playlist. That was the other crazy thing I remember. And so that's really been it. It's been as simple, and I think Pi and I have shared this between each other via messages before, how ridiculously simple it feels like it's been. And then around it, it has just been really holding space in a way that I'd never really thought about doing with him, that I've done professionally with my clients. But this was in an entirely new way, holding space for him and just doing nothing other than anticipating that something really remarkable was going to happen. And so that's the journey. That's really as complicated as it has been. And then we've obviously been introducing the newer playlist as well. And it hasn't all been straightforward. It's been like waves. So there've been waves of progress, and then waves of I don't want to call it regression, because it's not really regression. It's just waves of his body responding with more energy. Sorry, I was worried this one. I'm at home by myself with him, so I've got no one to help right now. You're just going to sit quietly. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, and so it hasn't been a linear progression at all, but it's been a really, really beautiful one to watch as a mum. And I think that it's been recognised by my husband as well, who's a lot less alternative than I am. And he's absolutely seen the progress. And now we definitely can say that school is seeing it as well. So I had a call at the beginning of our term, which was back in September, from his teacher, who's had him previously in her class. And she very much said to me, I don't know where he's gone. I don't understand. I left him a year ago, and I don't understand where this child has disappeared to. Thankfully, very fortunately, she's of a very similar mind, and brings in a lot of mindfulness into her classrooms. And if ever there was going to be another person who could hold space for him, it's been her. So I saw her last week for the end of term catch up, and she's just said to me, he's back. And that was really incredible. I might have cried on her a little bit. So that, because it was validation that it wasn't just me seeing and sensing these things, or able to create a space for him at home where he's responding better, but it's also happening at school as well. So that was really beautiful. But I do feel like it has taken a very particular group of people around him to have the expectation that he could be other than what he was demonstrating. You know, if there's any sense of this is who my child is, this is their person. I don't believe in personalities very much. I believe in our bodies are responding in particular ways to particular events. I think if you've been around a group of people who were less, perhaps were more fixed on their opinion of him, I don't know. I don't know if I feel like it would have been if he would have been allowed to have the opportunity to work in the same way. But the impact has been that I feel like he's got his cheeky smile back that he was beginning to lose. His energy is still there, but it's very much in a calm, grounded way. So his focus is still struggling at school. He's definitely still struggling with focus, but it's coming back enough for him to sit down and do pieces of work that he was struggling to do at the beginning of term. I think the most beautiful episode that I had with him was listening to the sort of second playlist beginning, where he actually, I watched in a dance happening for him, where his arm just, first of all, he listened to the music and for the first time, and he just said, "Mum, Mum, Mum, you've got to come and listen to this. My whole body's just melted. Come, your whole body will just melt." So I lay down with him. He said, "You've got to have the whole experience. Lie down, spend the whole 3 hours with me." I was like, "Okay, we're going to lie down now." Okay. And then his arm just started moving. Like it was kind of like just doing this, particularly his wrist. And he said, "Mom, my arm's just doing this all by itself." I was like, "I know, isn't it cool? It's just moving to the music, my love." And it was the very next day that he went and picked up a pen. And I cannot tell you, I mean, he's obviously been learning to write for some time, years, but we have never been able to get him to pick up a pen at home without a lot of bribery. And he hasn't been able to put a pen down since. So it's like something released in that moment. That's been, yeah, I think probably the most special of everything that I've witnessed so far. But I feel like there's no what it feels like is there's no compromise on the integrity of who he is not being lost. It's preserving this character, this cheekiness, this aliveness, this youth that is his, whilst things have just calmed down enough for him to be present in the moment that he's in. And he would alternate quite a lot between being quite high energy or very, very low energy. So very like fight flight or very freeze. And in freeze states for him, he would just be really zoned out. Often in whatever activity it was he was doing, it could be reading, it could, if he was watching a TV, but it'd be near on impossible to get him to hear me in those moments. He would be so zoned out. And so now I'm seeing that it's not just the intensity of the busyness of the fight flight that's happening. It's also when he's in those free states that he's receptive to hearing me. So I can call his name and he will respond. And that was quite something in the beginning as well, which sounds silly, but when you've been calling your child's name for a long time and they don't seem to be able to respond, and I do feel like that, I don't think it's because he couldn't hear me, it's like he couldn't respond. That's felt really, really special as well. So it feels very much like at the beginning of the journey. And I can feel the days where because we listen to it probably 3 times a week. Sometimes just out of circumstances, we don't get to do it consistently. And then I can notice it. So he definitely needs that consistency kept up. But it's significant enough that also that the the SEN teacher, which would be the sensory emotional support that they have at his school, has messaged me and said, I need to know what you're doing, because this is, you know, in this period of time that we've been doing this, it's really substantial. And she said, I think, you know, there's other parents would want to know who may be in similar situations. So, yeah. I'm sorry. I feel like I haven't given you my full present attention.
It's okay.
Sorry.
It's great. Yeah, it's great. It's actually more situationally apt that, yeah, we could. I've been talking to parents a lot, and I have so much resonance in this topic because I'm a parent. I have a 12-year-old and I have a 9-year-old, and they've been through all the waves they've been through. So I just think everyone's overwhelmed, whether it be parent or child. There's this sense of overwhelmness, but there's something in this that holds a vibratory key that feels like something could be more manageable. I think the first insight that I felt, there really is something into the way the playlist was constructed. I'm gonna be quite neutral about something, because it took me actually only 15 to 20 minutes to create that playlist, because I was with these doctors from Europe who were visiting, and I didn't even know or think I could do it. I didn't have the time, but there are technologies here that allow 2.5-hour playlists to be created in such a short time, because the building blocks are there. But I didn't really think about it so much. I was in a hurry. I sent it out confident that it would do something, but I didn't expect the kind of feedbacks that would start to trickle in through Lisa's voice notes. Okay, like this is like beyond what she imagined. This is beyond what Kim imagined, and for me, this is beyond what I imagined. And then the playlist has been passed on, and a lot of what you said is has been experienced by, I can't count how many. The playlist has just started to do its thing, and I've only really created two. The other one wasn't so much for children. It was for this mother who had a brain tumor, and the daughter asked me for a playlist, and I created that. And she has like 3 tumors in her brain, like one big one and 2 small ones. And now the 2 small tumors are actually gone, and the big tumor is reduced to about 30% in terms of size. So that's the home playlist that you're listening to. They both have different purposes. One is more for a system of organizing a 7-year-old's brain, and the other one is to help someone go through recovery process. I think these serve as different poles. But if I even just stepped outside of the fact that this playlist has something in the construction, my one insight, being a parent myself, was it's sometimes so hard to feel empowered when there's just so much going on. We have the work that we're doing. It's kind of ridiculous to take care of oneself already, because we're so complex and so deep, to have to take care of 1 or 2 or 3 of these. I live in the Philippines, where there's a lot more support mechanisms for childcare and, you know, family structures and holding home spaces. So I can barely imagine what it's like for mothers, single or not, like in the West, to be holding space for like a human being. So I just felt that it's something to do with empowerment, how we feel that there's something we can wield that is less invasive, is what we were talking about before I came in, that is fully respectful of what's already inside, that doesn't bring anything from the outside, but in fact holds something that's innate and tacit, with full respect and full granting of independence. So in that way, what we're holding is almost like this, some like a vibration, like holding someone's vibration intact, holding an entrainment process to further to be a seeing and hearing of that. So I was struck with the fact that you intuitively were, out of everything that you've been trying, intuitively knowing already prior to discovering inner dance through Lisa, it has something to do with holding. You called it audio, but it's so much more for sure. It's holding someone's energy wave or vibration. So to feel empowered as a mother, that you can actually help to hold the vibration of your child, which could be metaphor for soul, for resonance. I think I think that's one of the main insights here. If you want to say something to that.
I think it's something that every mother feels. I think they intuitively feel that, I don't want to say something's wrong. It's intuitively feel that their child has drifted away from who they are, naturally are. But in that moment, I think it can trigger your fear state before it triggers you going into a state of safety in order to hold that child. And that took me a long time to understand that. And I think that's what I see with a lot of people, a lot of mums, that it can be or could be a different way for your child. And it's not, I think that society can make it sound like you're trying to make your child perfect, and it's not that. You're trying to get them back to who they are naturally. So you try a lot of things, and I think you can try a lot of things from a state of fear that doesn't help as much as it could in the end. And I'm sure I tried a lot of things from a state of fear. And it was a very serendipitous set of experiences prior to the experience with Lisa and inner dance that allowed me to be aware of the impact of co-regulating from a state of safety that I'd understood from polyvagal theory. So I still feel very, very, very fortunate that my other interests allowed me to understand that I needed to lead him into a state of safety, and that this was, and actually what I really like about it, now that I think about it, is it's just him and I in that moment. It's not me and him and a therapist or he's not in an environment that isn't his. It feels like listening to a story at nighttime. It feels like something that's completely safe for him. He's in bed or he's in my bed, and there is not a physical space that is safer for him. So all of that, and I'd not thought about the fact that it's the physical environment as well until now. I feel that that's a missing piece of the story for a lot of mums, is that you're right intuitively in feeling like it could be and should be a different way, but to not operate from a state of fear is really hard, really, really hard.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost like something needs to switch, which would be like a cascade of conditions that allow us to just, the big word is trust. And like, what would you trust, especially when there's so much going on? We can't get away from this feeling of overwhelm, which is going to just be more and more. I would ask, someone to share from another perspective on this. So in the inner dance community in Finland, we can see a lot of this from like a chicken and egg kind of space. Like when Johanna started to help hold community in Helsinki, where inner dance really started to hold something huge for people. She and some others, but mostly her, decided to really go for what she and others felt was the most important. Because when we look at, okay, there's just something off, and we want to heal that, where do you start? So like the Helsinki community was holding a lot of the mother, supporting the mother, and mother doesn't have to be just actualized mother. It could be mother in potency, in potentia, or a mother who's in transition, pregnant mothers, where there would be people in first, second, third stage pregnancy would go and process things. So there's that chicken and egg question, like where do we start? So do we start in the schools, because that's where new human beings are not just becoming old, just going through, older, and then, but if we're not able to work in the home setting, that holds the space. So there's a lot of insight in the Finnish work, and a lot of us do know Finland is known for its whole systems, education. There's something very holistic there, but it seems like inner dance in a very different way has also been able to hold the sound of mothers, still in the same kind of alone, we can call it like intimate, solitary, like energy space. So the word womb is very symbolic and can actually become quite literal almost there, and similarly a really cold place where people come to find this warmth. I'd be interested to sense what Johanna is seeing in a lot of this, evolutionary speaking, coming from what was like, was that 3 years ago or 4 years ago, and they're already starting to hold these womb mother, inner mama sessions, being a mother herself. Yeah.
Hello. Can you hear me? I had to take my headphones. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing, Kim. My daughters are 7 and 4, so it's really close to where I'm at, and also kind of similar symptoms that we live with, like milder, but a lot of clashes in our kind of collaboration with my daughters, just like daily basis. So it's a lot of intensity, and yes, it's huge how this playlist and this thing with Josh's Josh's playlist and everything that has been going around it has been born around it so naturally, and how you describe the space that you share with him, and as a mother, whole kind of allowing the child hold his own space with the mother. The inner mama in Finland is a space that was created through the experience, what happens giving a birth to a child, and when the child is born, how the womb space actually emerges within the regression through the birth itself. And it happens for the mother, but it also kind of the whole time of pregnancy offers the whole community or the parents and the mother to dive into that womb space and reflect upon where do we come from and where are we going, and what's kind of beyond the vibration turning into this form, and what does it carry in all the systems that are held within and around this form and shared on earth. And this was a space that I related or we relate with, that it doesn't only happen or you can, the, how do you say it, the wisdom of the vibrational space of the womb space goes in all the directions, not only from a mother who just experiences a child being born and growing alongside and reflecting all the layers of the consciousness growing into this body, and then the interpretations that might be there, but also the lineage behind, like the reflections that we go with and through once children are there, and they are mirroring the surroundings through these bodily ways that you also describe really beautifully, that it's just his body responding to the surroundings. It's what is being carried from before, also the vibrations that we are carrying with the relationship, kind of, you can say a relationship with your mother, or your becoming a person, like a human vibration. So allowing this space for everyone, it's also becoming not only for inner mama, it's for, I wouldn't say it's only for women, and it's not only for mothers, as Pai said, it's for everyone in going into this space of the mother and the womb that the mother holds, like as a frequency where this shift happens, and then kind of going in back also to the human story, how it reflects and is being reflected when a baby is received. Yeah. So this is where we are now with the inner mama, that it's actually opening its wings, not only to support the actual birth and grow, like, yeah, well, I don't know, this was so sudden that I have to speak about it. It's got so much, so maybe I'll give it to Pai.
Thank you. There's a lot there, and there's a lot in what Kim shared, specifically. I'm actually trying to remember it. I'll speak from what bounced off of me anyway. When suddenly there's this human being that just came out of nowhere, what does that do to us? What does that do to a father or mother? Having have had two, and my ex-partner has a baby, and I'm helping to take care of that one. So it reminds me, it keeps reminding me like what's there. There's something about holding something that can't really use words. There's something very body-based about it. It's almost like you're an extension of that one, and you know where it needs to go, especially when you have contact. I hold a lot of contact with my children because it's a way of listening. But like going into conversations with so many mothers, especially mothers who are in the inner dance process, what comes alive is the fact that we're also becoming them. And so what Kim, I remember now, what Kim talked about is there's this shift. And I think this is really important to verbalize. There's this shift in both parents that goes into like fear, when in fact, what I've been observing and hoping for is there's an opportunity there. There's actually this opportunity where we're not just teaching or giving them care. They're teaching us. They have something to remind us as to where were we before we got here. So I think one of the worst fears is like losing control. And on a brain state level, like when we do channel them, when we become them, we actually lose even not just some of our cognitive capacities, but some of our language capacities. We start to go into like, it's called motherese, it's baby talk, because we have to communicate with them in a nonverbal way. So having journeyed with many parents, I do see that there could be a powerful awakening within a family system that may not be as easy in certain places in the West, where you have to mechanically just take them into the rigmarole, okay, put them there, and then that helps me because then I can go to work. And it's very not indigenous, not tribal, not how we naturally did things. It's just how we normally do things now. So I've been interested in like a certain stage. It could be between 2 to 3 years of age, where the mother and the father could actually take something from that language acquisition device, the time that they start to learn how to speak. There's something very powerful in that moment. But I think that moment could extend up until they like preteens, 7 years old. It's a powerful space. For me, what was amazing was when I was parenting Sinag and Isa, I was going through all of these spiritual transformation work, but by the loads. I would travel across the world, and we had a retreat center, and there would be people from all around the world, and they'd be going so deep and explosive. And then I go home. And I had this consistency that when I go home, I could give them a hug, I could hold them, I could embrace them, and they, so what was interesting for me was there was no difference between adults becoming like children again, and then children learning to become people with personas and Gmail accounts, and getting good grades and whatnot. I really could see that there was a sameness, an isomorphy, a structural sameness on the mentality. Even the brain state could be explained through REM state consciousness and so on and so forth. If I was to clarify this in the cosmic brush, this is what inner dance does, which helps to bring some explanations to what the Josh playlist does. Don't know how to draw this, but let's say there's this let's call it, let's say, a funnel. You know, like you have an hourglass, which is a kind of funnel, and what an hourglass does is there's like sand in the hourglass of time, and then you have these trickles of sand that allows what is all at once to trickle in time, one at a time. So we could see that as a metaphor of time itself, you know, literally metaphorized by a timekeeper like the hourglass. So one way to look at that from a scientific point of view is that's called latent inhibition. So latent inhibition would be like the gating mechanism that allows the mind not to get overwhelmed by the like all of these things that are happening around. It's just a chaos. Like the mind then has to gate or filter the sounds, the images, the feelings, the words, like all this information that's coursing through. We can only handle basically so much. So what we need to learn, which babies did not have, is to create like latent inhibition. So people who are kind of blessed or cursed to have what's called low latent inhibition, which is supposed to be a disorder, but what people are realizing is actually a gateway to genius, to creativity, to brilliance. People with LLI, they don't really look like the hourglass. What they look like is more of a tube where all of these things that are going on, they just course through in maybe a geometric figure that isn't so filtered or gated. So that's what inner dance kind of brings about, like an actual gentle ways to achieve lowering of latent inhibition, and a lot of it could be explained through neurotransmitters, through the autonomic nervous system, the circadian rhythms. I don't want to go into it today. We're gonna discuss it tomorrow and the day after. But this is just to say that the human potential is there. It's innate. Somehow, from the point of view of evolution, development, progress, we societally had to gate what was too much. Actually, what is important there that needs to be drawn out is people with low latent inhibition basically start to experience the network differently. So we could see this as either the iconic or the echoic or the semantic network. Okay, so the iconic network would be all the images that you take in throughout the whole day, the whole week, the whole month. Oh, sorry.
Are you sharing?
No, sorry. Good, thank you. Guys have to remind me when it happens. So the echoic network would be all the sounds that you absorb throughout the day. Semantic network would be all the words that you hear that can also be overwhelming. So there's the mind does something called priming, which is a way of associating things. So that in conversation, say you hear something, then your mind kind of goes there together with whoever you're speaking with. So when you belong to a logic, technocratic, autocratic space, it's very convenient to conduct the priming in a way where connections are clear and explicit, and doesn't just blow up and explode into something way too creative. And where I'm getting at with this is the semantic networking, the echoic and iconic networking of a 3-year-old or a 7-year-old is very different from someone who's maybe 30 or 40 or 50. So like the network would be, okay, I'm thinking of mama, and then maybe naturally there would be concepts associated with mom would be milk, or then like diapers, babies, and so on and so forth. So people with high latent inhibition, the distance between one concept to those that are connected to it would be quite clear and short. For people who have low latent inhibition, what happens is there are these things that don't really even seem to be related to each other. They would start to go into these like all these connections would just go into hyper priming as opposed to a direct priming. So let's say adults who go through an inner dance or through other similar modalities, the distances between each point would suddenly shorten in a way that the directionally and spatially, like everything would just interconnect. Now, that would be the case for, let's say, a 30 or 40-year-old, but for a 3 or 4-year-old or 5 or 6-year-old who still had not really established the semantic network that interprets meanings and energies in words, in language, in verbal clarity, they would be very much living still in the iconic and the echoic network, so in a way, this is what a child does. They are still organizing this space so that when it comes to the right moment, then we can go into words. Words are things that you can define, and when you can define it, you can make it finite, as opposed to infinite, which is to a baby or a small child more akin or more reflective of who they are. So I think schooling systems, social systems in general, need to understand how we might more gently initiate small people into the semantic network, the network of meaning that's more explicit and more clear. That's why we brought in Finland to reflect with this, because the Finnish school system is that in the world that understands how slow we must be before we introduce certain levels of mathematics, of reading and writing, of verbal intelligence. There needs to be kinesthetic, proprioceptive, audio, artistic, creative intelligence, so that by the time the brain has evolved enough to be able to hold not so much like a limited framing, but much more vast, much more just more vast in terms of the network. I think as human beings, this is something we're realizing only now, that we might have grown up too fast, too quickly, too forcibly, and because we have that in ourselves, that would naturally still translate to our own parenting process, because the world still is not so easy it's not paradise by any, you know. We're still at a mode of transition, and parents now are having to go through, like, it's like being in two different rooms at the same time. It's just so much wisdom, so much insight, yet a lot of what we know hasn't really translated into what we are and what we're doing. So to have a starting point where consciousness is it, you know, we come into metacognition, we come into questions that aren't just about what do we do, but who are we, how are we constructed, like what are we made of as waveforms, as vibrations. We're experiencing it now. There's an awareness of it. So to be able to, I think, share this, talking about, okay, there are parents who might be interested, we must be able to contextualize as well, in order for this to be safe. It also must be understood, even though sometimes the deeper understanding will come from having experienced it, because could you really actually get to know something if you haven't been through it? Then it would just be conceptual. But because a lot of us do live in parts of the world where things are gated, where latent inhibition is still quite high. In order to bring low latent inhibition, we need to gift this in the most holistic, organic way possible. In general, I think it's just important to speak about this clearly, that there's this genius, there's this amazing child that wanted to be seen and wanted to be heard, and that's also us, like, in a way. And then we can just systematize this, and it's ridiculous, because at the end of the day, the whole solution to all these problems is actually quite simple. This is what Kim is saying. And actually, within the inner dance community, Kim, the one other lady who really took to this and has been using this playlist is Kim as well. And I actually only found out your name 2 days ago. And then, oh, okay, you know, Kim is from Belgium, and she's been sharing the Josh playlist. She's been doing it for her children. So there's a lot of synchronicity there as well. How could it be this easy? Why did we make it so hard? Maybe it was supposed to be this easy, but there is a lot that backs this at easiness because of the global experience, you know, a lot of which had to start in the tropics, where things are a lot more relaxed and loose and not so protected and fear-based. But I think we're at the this you know, this transition, this tipping point, this domino tipping point. So that's where I'm at. So I'm happy to just hear from everyone, including Kim, if she's still here, and anyone else, like what does this all mean to you? And let's see how far this call would go. Thank you.
I wonder if I might just say something to Joanna's words, because it was fascinating to hear about you talking about doing it with mums. The sort of the earlier story with Josh is that he had a very, very traumatic birth. And I feel like when I look back, from the minute I held him, he didn't feel safe. And so that was incredible to hear you talking about doing it at such an early stage, because had I known, had that been a thing on my radar, I can completely imagine the impact that would have had. So I imagine you're having an incredible impact with your work. And I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also repeating something that has already been shared, but something that was coming up. I am trying to remember that that about the fear having a child, and actually when doing inner dance and kind of going back to being complete without all these structures that we've learned and created, we're becoming babies again, and then growing up again. And when you receive a child, it's actually something that naturally happens, that it's not it's not us teaching that something that is already complete, but it's the child kind of letting us remember what was it to be a child, and being complete already without having to become something. So I think a lot of the fear that we hold is about becoming something or being something that we had to become, and then kind of holding this fear of allowing the child to reflect what was it and how is it, how that is so complete already without becoming anything. So I think it's really relevant there. That happens naturally for the parents, the inner dance happening naturally through the child, and that's why something that in the interaction with growing up with the child is actually the other way around, that the child is the teacher and the parent is the student actually. And there's something interesting that I want to ask maybe about, just to leave it there, about the corpus callosum. It's the bridge, right? Yeah. So when I was reading about it, some things came up. Here in Finland, the kids, they go to school at 7, when they turn 7, and they start learning, like actively learning reading and writing, and also organizing, like going to school, going to the desk and study as well. And what I found about corpus callosum is that it starts actually developing to its stages around that age. So I'm interested in that when we're talking about the full spectrum of electricity in a way, and then something starts trying to be more directed or like controlled in a way. I don't know. Yeah, something there.
Yeah, I resonate with this. I was the one who taught my daughter to read. She was really resisting learning. She's quite artistic, so she had to go through her own pace. So that was interesting for me. That was the first time I ever taught anyone how to read. So I was stuck with this big debate inside myself. Do I go for the phonetics system of teaching her like one sound or one letter at a time, or do I go for like this one, like whole word meaning? I was experimenting. Do we understand how to read by understanding the relationship between the letters, or like each sound like in a linear way? There are many people who are trying to debunk like the one word as what holds meaning. But I really saw it, that there was really a stage in my daughter Isa's development where reading was going to happen, and it was somehow around the age of 8. Now she just looks around and she instantly gets even long 3 or 4 syllable words. But I could see how slow it had to be. And I got a sense that if I pushed her any more than I did, I would actually do some damage, that something inside of her would prematurely not really enjoy learning and not develop or grow in a way that preserves a lot of what the right brain's parallel processing could hold. Like she would just be forced to go into linear mode, and I could see that emotionally she would be holding a resistance to that, vibrationally speaking, that something had to grow old too fast where language was concerned. So yeah, you speak about children go to school and at the age of 7 they learn to read and write. Like, you travel to the Philippines, Singapore, China, Korea, children now can read at, I think, 3 years old, would already be considered old. I've seen 2-year-olds like actually reading when in fact you should just be learning how to speak at that time. So in Asia, like, we bought into this idea really strongly that you need to compete, you need to advance so you could grow up and make as much money and have status and power as early as possible. We bought into this idea that came from somewhere else, and we're actually, so there's not much dialogue or understanding of what this is, what's happening in the brain, this thing. What is this thing? We're just, rather than trying to understand it, I think what's happening is trying to manipulate it. It's just become like a tool, like just another tool, rather than like a reflection in who we are that holds, awareness as it is. So I feel the things that we do, like even just asking people to close their eyes and lay down, when we use audio, when we use sound, when we use vibration, it heals the thing that became a little bit too visual. When you do read, what happens is, interestingly, where it shifts is, it's not just the corpus callosum, Johanna. When you're still using sound, when you're using words, spoken word speech as your mode of communication, when you hear the sound, normally you would receive it in the auditory cortex, which is in the parietal lobe, somewhat also in the, it conjoins also the frontal, the insular cortex, and some of the temporal. When we learn how to read, we actually had to train ourselves to receive the words here in the occipital lobe, where the visual cortex is. So there's a really interesting shift when you shift from spoken word to the written word. You actually go to the back of the head, and so when you read, the first activations of the activations in the brain happens here, and then it slowly moves into the temporal, the temporal lobe, and the audio cortex, and then the somatosensory cortex, where interpretations become more spread out. So I think what the Finnish school system had discovered was, it's not even about audio or like they're talking more about movement. Like, what's important is how the child bears a relationship with the physical space, that they are free, that they understand the role of kinesthesia and proprioception being the necessary space in which they can arrive at thinking, conceptualizing, and then reading and writing is really like an avenue to put a lot of what you absorbed into sequence, into or organization. But if you haven't actually arrived at a vocabularization of energy, of sounds, of sensations and emotions yet, when there's like a push, that's when there are these emotions, that's when there are these even physiological problems that start to come up. So the problem is in the system itself, that just really learned how to do it through an evolutionary process. So it's almost like within inner dance, what specifically makes inner dance work is it has something to do with the mu wave and the mirror neuron. So the mu wave happens normally when we're at rest, and when you start to move, and then in relation to the mirror neuron, when you're watching someone move, you activate the mirror neurons. And when you activate the mirror neurons, you actually need to inhibit or suppress the mu wave. So the mu wave happens in between between both ears, around the motor cortex, and the alpha wave happens around the occipital lobe, the visual cortex. So what we're learning to do is to activate the mu wave rather than suppress it, even while our eyes are open. And normally the mu wave would be totally freed up when we're in the dream state, when we're in super creative, simultaneous, all at once, where we can absorb and be the whole network rather than just try to arrange the network into some kind of line where there's a sequence of points. And then mostly the only people who can really activate or not suppress the mu wave while their eyes are open and they're watching other people, or they're in action, understanding, when they're moving, when they're acting. It's the autistic people, those who are within the autistic spectrum. And some people would say autism is like a disease, it's a disorder, but when you talk to savants, they can handle more. They can handle more. So it's almost like coming into these ages from 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 8. We're able to handle less because we're so overwhelmed. But what we're training the brain to do now, Kim does this. She works with flow states. This is what we do. We're learning to handle more. It's like we had a musician here the other day. His name's FKJ, and he's known for being this multitasking musician who can handle all these instrumentations and bring that into a concert as a one-man like music genius. So I think we lost the capacity to do this, and we've lost this Gardner's understanding of multiple intelligences and so on and so forth. So what we're actually learning is to invoke the autistic and the savant and the inner child and the dreamer. All of these are almost synchronous because on a brain state level, they actually exhibit the same system. So what we lost was the mu wave. It's something we had to give up when we invented language, when we there was a reason for that though, because the mu wave allows for the mirror neuron to activate, starting with the apes, the monkeys, and the humans. It allowed us to empathize. It allowed us to have more self-awareness than other animals. It allowed us to have memory. It allowed us to have the separation between the left and right brain. But I think we're missing what we used to have, which is instinct, which is flow, which is so I think we're regaining it somehow, and the inner dance serves as an introduction to that. Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to say that all of that conversation and your description of the latent inhibition, that sounded like the science to how I felt as a mum, wanting him to be his fullest self. And also I thought it might be relevant just to mention that Josh actually goes to quite an alternative school. So when he was 2, I heard that there was a rather crazy woman in West London running forest nurseries. So outside all day long, all the way through the winter, in the snow, in the rain. And something in me just said, this is where my child needs to be. And what was really interesting is that by the time he was tested by an occupational therapist about a year ago, she said he presents really strangely, because it's like he's got bits of what I would expect to see, but bits of not. So he struggled with proprioception, but not with some other things, with his balance. And she really credited that outdoor time for having done a lot of that work, where he would have presented much more conventionally. And I think just knowing that a conventional school would never be good for him, the woman who set up these nurseries went on to set up a primary school, sorry. So he now is at an outdoor primary school that uses project-based learning rather than traditional subject-based learning. They don't have desks. They have logs that they sit on. They're encouraged to move a lot. So, it's lovely to hear that I really can resonate with how the traditional education system has stopped that very natural. And even you talking about your daughter, knowing that to push her would be wrong. I very much felt the same. I remember thinking, if I send him to a school where he's being sat down and told he needs to learn things, this is going to switch him off his enjoyment and love of this so fast. So much synergy in what you're saying. And also then I think something that's very poignant that I'm not sure it's as extreme perhaps as in Scandinavian countries that he's going to. They're really trying their best. But that inner dance still has a massive role to play, even with a kid that's been in a very alternative space.
Yeah, I think so too. As a compliment, I really think that we are a product of evolution, and we lost sound. I think it's as simple as that. We lost sound when we lost oral tradition or orality. Sound-based cultures became literate, and when a culture becomes literate, they start to take things literally, and so we lose the vibration in the literalization. It's like the wave particle theory in quantum physics. It's like we lost the wave because we're so output oriented. Alternative or conventional, it's really just the world, like where we're at. We're too three-dimensional, and we're now moving into other dimensional perceptions and experiences. So thank you for affirming inner dance in that way. So anyone else would like to share? It's been really amazing to listen to these. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings?
I feel like this is an amazing opportunity to have a mini revolution, because all these beautiful instances are happening in societies that are quite structured and are inviting to challenge that structure and in a beautiful way. So it's quite the peaceful revolution, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. I want to add something that I read that it was very interesting about sound, and it's that sound can impregnate even objects. So the vibrations get on the objects, and the objects are affected, the matter. And yeah, some cultures, some indigenous people did that on purpose to impregnate certain objects with a certain vibration by sound. So there's so much to explore with regards to sound. Yeah, incredible. Thank you.
Hi. Um, I'm super happy to hear about Josh and the story. Yeah, we've been following it since the beginning, so it's really amazing now to hear from you, Kim. Something that was shared in the whole call today made me think about the studies on brain waves, and they realized, or they found out that from 0 to 2, the babies are mainly in delta waves, and then from 2 to 4 they go into theta, and then slowly up to 12, we're from 12 on, we're holding more beta waves in our brain, and when we're adults, we're mainly holding beta waves. Well, all of them, but mainly this is the most active one in our brain. And so I was reflecting on the shift in personality, because if we are mostly in the waves where the subconscious is being like it's mostly the consciousness or the subconscious from 0 to 7 especially, but it varies. So I was reflecting on how much it does influence this personality that we're creating, and how much it's maybe developing at a certain age, and what happens when we use sound, and we use playlist, or we use kind of like, in a way, brainwaves entrainment to remind the child of of who it is or what we are, before it gets influenced so much by society or by the surrounding or its environment. However, it's being held by the parent. If the parent is conscious, then there's a kind of this like need to hold the child in its own essence. And if it's more directed in like the school system, or even, okay, you need to learn this way, you should be on this percentile in the curve, or like being seen more as I was going to say robotic, but it's not the right word. So yeah, just actually questions that are coming up, and reflections on how it's influencing all of the growth of a child, and how much we can, because there's something important I felt that you shared, Kim, about, and Johanna as well, to how to keep this personality alive without shaping it or conditioning it to not too much, but influencing it in a certain direction. Yeah, so just thoughts happening. Thank you.
I want to read a message that Kim just sent our Studios Mundos group. So Kim is from Antwerp, I think. And she's been using the Josh playlist for her child. I forget like how old he is. She said she's not able to join now, but she just had a meeting with her son's teacher, and that they share that they're observing a positive movement related to his well-being in the learning environment, more capable to deal with the panic attacks he has. So I think that talks about two things. One is emotions, and relating this to what everyone shared, especially through the lens of the story of Kim, like Kim, who's here now, and Josh. There's something about learning, I think, that's going to be a really interesting topic. Like how does learning really happen? How do we retain, process, store information? And how does that like get embodied in a way that also, in a wisdom kind of sense, it's like embodied wisdom, but at the same time is intelligence in every sense of the word. So this is what I would be really watching. Like personally, this has been the project I've been in, moving from like the surrender space, the healing space, into reconstructing a self with consciousness, able to be with the unconscious. So I do feel that a lot of these stories, in terms of a 7-year-old boy who now cannot let go of the pen, and before that he wouldn't pick it up. I'm a parent, so I know what that's like. And then hearing from the other Kim, with the teachers like saying exactly the same as Josh's teachers, it's really strange. It's amazing. So I think we've been interested in schools for a really long time now. When I first started to do this work, my sister owned the school, and it was a really well-known school for being this alternative powerhouse. It's just for preschool, kindergarten kids. Didn't have grade school at that time, so she invited me, and I think there were 12 kids there, and they really got it. Like, just it was a shock even to me, because I've not held a room for kids before. It was adults, and this is the first year of inner dance, and they totally got it, and their bodies were moving. I think some it wasn't, but they saw images, and they were talking to their teachers later when I wasn't there anymore, and they said we went here in the universe, and everything became God. And but after that, like I've done a lot of work with schools. Like I remember this one time in India, we introduced it to hundreds of kids for one day, and all these classes had to come through, and every single child went somewhere. It's mind-blowing. We asked them to write down or draw what they saw, and it was documented really well. But I don't think that was yet the time. And I feel like a lot of what's being shared here, we can't escape the context like Kim is coming from. It's amazing that Josh is going to an alternative school, but a lot of us could surmise what it means to bring up a child in, not just in the West, but in London, in England, in the United Kingdom. It's quite a thing. So to be witnessing these sharings, these transitions happening now from that kind of space, I think is meaningful somehow. The Philippines is still in a post-colonial process where we received education from initially the Spanish and then the Americans, and the American school system still started from the British. So we got several generations beneath. And so you have this thing called inner dance that's bringing about this other learning process. When I look at that, that's quite weird and strange for me, because the Philippines is doing rather badly educationally speaking. the first time we joined the program for international student assessment in 2018, and we've only undergone it twice. We, in reading, writing, and mathematics, we, out of 79 participating countries, we were 79. That was our ranking. In science, I think we were 78. It doesn't matter that we're one of the most English fluent in Asia compared to China and Bangladesh. How did we get to this? So there's something about literacy that didn't really work in a place that still held so much in sound and orality. It's called residual orality. So to take something from this space and bring it to where a lot of this actually started, and then to hear there's almost like this feedback loop that something that was colonized, when it finds its own sound and then is brought to that same space where the you know, what was dominating, colonizing, suddenly receives it, and it seems to work. There's like a decolonizing, or even a sound then maybe colonizing the image-based literate culture somehow, so that they could listen to each other. They all bear gifts. They all hold something. But maybe this is a time when something needs to go, you know, go upside down, go into inversions, reversals of sorts. Oh wow, looking at the date, gosh, it's December 21, which is a Wednesday, and it's 2022. So talking about inversions, the end of the Mayan calendar was December 21, 2012. So today is exactly a decade after something, the most advanced calendar system that was ever brought to the humans was, you know, like it supposedly ended and brought about a new experience and conceptualization of time and space. So maybe this speaks to us about consciousness going into the dimensionalities, and that's interesting. Any last sharings? Then we can close soon. So, people are in holiday mode, so I think people are busy. What else would you like to express? Anyone?
There are some people, because I'm following people who say that this thing of the 2012, that it's ongoing. I mean that it was expected on 2012 that people from that culture, Quechua people and things like that, that it was supposed to happen in 2012, but that it's happening, that it's here, that it's now. Yeah.
Is inner dancing for parents a concept that maybe could be developed, or is it something that it's being looked at as a class, like in the future, perhaps?
This is where it's going. It's been going there, and I myself, I feel like I would be spending a lot more time. Like next year, I want to devote most of my time for the medical system and the education system. I won't be spending as much time in the Kundalini or even energy systems, because it already is quite like happening around. So it's exciting.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Okay, so I think we could just close. Kim, wow, thank you. Thank you so much, not just for today, for your trust, your conscious motherhood. You really unraveled for us quite a bit, and it's been happening. There's so much honesty and so much, it just feels journey based, like we're in there with you. And early on we couldn't escape the fact that 7-year-old's old boy's process was actually holding so much. And a lot of the openings that Josh playlist has brought about is already sending ripples, especially to our work with doctors, who are realizing through the many stories, the so many stories, including yours, so many stories that patients who are undergoing emergencies need this. They really need this. Because the doctors are like parents, they feel really overwhelmed, and they feel like school teachers, they're absorbing so much, like what's being in schools. There's like a buffering system, conventional schools, whatever's happening at home, it gets buffered there. And then in hospitals as well, there's a lot of buffering where fear avoidance, people not wanting to die, pain avoidance. A lot of the medicine is designed to keep that within a cycle of avoidance, and not so much as going into the deeper reasons for a disease pattern or an illness, an emotional disorder. So it's not that Josh Playlist is doing it. It just came along when I myself was being bombarded by all these emails and messages from doctors. So it felt like in the chakra system, the hospital might be in the red, and the school might be in the indigo. Knowing and sustainability seem to be holding the top and the bottom. Somehow we need to bring the green, the heart space, like love, service, healing, we need to bring it to the schools and the hospitals where learning and healing are being held. So we're really grateful for your son. We think he's done something there in representation of what's still able to hold on to its pure, and is able to carry that forth at a really, the number 7 is such a magical number. So thank you for joining us today. And I think we could just all unmute. Kim, if you wanted to say one last thing, we'd give you the Flora wants to say something, or we just say goodbye. Okay, just unmute yourself and let's call it a day or a night.
Bye everyone, lovely to see you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Huge.
Bye everyone.